Marhaba, and welcome to the Matrix Green Pill, where real people connect.
Hello, and welcome back to the Matrix Green Pill podcast. My name is Shireen Zamo, and today I am very happy to be joined by Vimbai Masiyiwa. Vimbai is just 27 years old and is already preparing to open the doors of Batoka Zambezi Sands River Lodge, a luxury game lodge in Zimbabwe. She aims to use hospitality and tourism to be able to create sustainable livelihoods, a local economic growth, alleviate poverty, and get people to a place where they can live at a decent human level. Vimbai, I'm so happy to be joined by you today. Welcome.
Hi, Shireen. Thank you so much for having me on the podcast today. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation with you.
As am I. So, Vimbai, let's start off with getting to know you just a little bit better. If you could give us a short background story or elevator pitch of yourself, that would be great.
Sure. So I'm Vimbai Masiyiwa. I am founder and CEO of Batoka Hospitality. One of our products is lodges, namely Zambezi Sands, which we are preparing to open. I think we probably will have opened by the time this podcast episode airs. A social entrepreneur is the title that I use for myself, and proudly African, hoping to be part of the African transformation.
Amazing. Okay. I'm really excited to delve into what you're doing with the Batoka Zambezi Sands River Lodge. Let's talk about that. Could you tell me what exactly are you doing, what we can expect to find there?
Zambezi Sands is a luxury tented game lodge. We have tented suites, some private plunge pools. We sit in the Zambezi National Park, which is one of the larger national parks in Zimbabwe on the Victoria Falls side. We're about 45 minutes away from Victoria Falls, which many people will know, possibly some of your listeners, that the Victoria Falls are one of the world's wonders. We are on the Zambezi riverbank. So our property, our main product offering is obviously a safari experience, but for us, we are creating that experience while collaborating with local community, really just trying to bring forward authenticity in terms of African luxury, in terms of immersing our guests in local cultures.
Wow, that sounds really amazing. I'm sure the scenery must be incredible. What made you decide to establish a luxury game lodge in Zimbabwe?
My background, which will surprise a lot of people, is in computer information systems and entrepreneurship. So when I finished college, hospitality and safari lodges were certainly not in the books for me. But I did a trip at the end of my senior year, so at the end of my university studies. The trip was to Victoria Falls. I'm Zimbabwean myself, but hadn't spent much time in the Victoria Falls during my upbringing. We stayed at a safari lodge then, and it was probably the first safari experience I'd had in my adult years, just experiencing the rawness of Africa and seeing how incredible Victoria Falls as a town was pretty life transforming for me. The other thing that I noticed during that trip as we were driving around Victoria Falls was just the level of poverty, the numbers of people in poverty that we were seeing. For me, it was, as for anyone, it was heartbreaking. I kind of worked on trying to marry the experience of safari with how do we transform the livelihoods of local people in Victoria Falls. Tourism is the primary source of income for the region. Clearly, from what we were seeing as we were driving through, was that the locals themselves were not benefiting from that. The general reason, the purpose of starting Betoga Hospitality and going into Batoka lodges was how we then make sure that we collaborate, partner with the local community to ensure that they are benefiting for this industry that generates the most income for the city.
Is very unfortunate to hear for sure. And that's actually something that we hear a lot in beautiful places that get known for their tourism, but then the local community is the last one to ever benefit from all of that. It's amazing that you spotted that and decided to do something about it.
Everybody sees it, I think. And I do think a lot of different safari companies have tried and have done so in many different ways, working with transforming communities. But the business model that really taken on is bringing them on as a partner instead of a beneficiary of the work that we do, which is providing luxury travel experiences.
Going off of that, What would you say is the importance of creating African luxury brands that are owned by Africans?
It's the idea of ownership. Many people who have visited the continent will say this is that we are very hospitable people. We love to serve Africans, regardless of which part of the continent you come from. You'll find that Africans love to serve and they love to make people comfortable in their homes. And I think as we see the world of hospitality in particular transform in these unique experiences that you see anywhere in Europe that you go to, anywhere in the US, we want to see the same for Africa. And I think there is an importance of people who are from specific countries, specific towns and cities, being the ones to share that story through different products and services.
I completely agree with you. And would you say that you encountered some struggles, or when you started setting up Batoka Zambezi at the lodge, did you have any struggles that you felt, wow, I didn't prepare for this? And how did you resolve them?
Oh my goodness. I think 80% of everything that we've done the last 2 years, I did not prepare myself for, which I think is probably common in business anyways. It ranges from being a female leader in the industry. The safari lodge industry is slim on female leaders, non-existent Black female leaders. That was definitely the first hurdle to kind of work through, is taking up space and being confident in owning the safari lodge, being confident in being part of the industry, and also just trying to pave the way for myself. To be honest, the industry, particularly in Zimbabwe, wasn't welcoming at the start. I've obviously spent time trying to create some of those relationships, but that was probably the biggest struggle that I faced. Then we've had, as with any construction project, timeline delays, struggles with getting the right materials. We really wanted to get as many of our materials locally, to source that locally, but it wasn't possible. So we brought in some things from South Africa. The procurement process was quite tough. And then, of course, we were constructing the property during COVID, and global supply chains were affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. So we saw things like steel shortages that impacted our build too. So there have been a lot of different struggles. But I think the important thing for me was to remember why I was doing what I was doing, the staff that we had already brought on and who believe in the vision, believe in what we're trying to achieve. And collectively, we just had to power through that. There's always a solution. And while there are first time struggles for me, maybe as a leader, there are other people who have led great organizations who face some of the struggles that we had. I definitely had to spend a lot of time exploring other people's stories, other entrepreneur stories, and just learning from those who've gone before me.
That sounds really like a learning curve. It was like a very long process, right? To go through everything. In the end, you've learned a lot.
Yeah, a very steep learning curve.
Actually, I want to touch on a point that you made about the lack of female entrepreneurs, specifically in the safari industry. So just to reroute back to that, what advice would you give to other young or not young, just female entrepreneurs in general that are passionate about getting into the safari industry, but just don't know how? Now that you've gone through the process and have gone through the struggles, would you like the key takeaway from that to be from your experience?
It's all about being confident in yourself and the skills and the capabilities that you have, trying to be comfortable in taking up your space and owning your space in the industry. I don't think there are any industries that are specifically supposed to be dominated by one group of people. I think if you have a vision on your heart that you want to go for, do it. Sometimes people say fake it till you make it. I definitely have done that and sometimes continue to do that. You have to teach yourself to be comfortable in the space that you're in and believe that you deserve to be there and that you're supposed to be there. It's all about how you train yourself mentally.
I really like that it's definitely a different journey for different people. Everyone goes through different challenges and struggles, but in the end, it's important to always remember why you're doing what you're doing, exactly as you said, because that's the main motivator. My next question was going to be about the opening of the property, which is going to coincide with the launch of the Tese Fund. Can you share more about this fund and its mission, please?
Initiatives like the Tese Fund are the reason why I started working on Betoga. The Tese Fund is essentially a fund that we've put together internally within our organization, where we take a percentage of revenues from guest stays and hold it in a fund for our staff. Now, the purpose of that fund is for staff to come up with initiatives that they lead that will help with growth in their local community. Over 90% of our staff are from the local community. And what we want to do is to empower people to build ecosystems that provide for economic growth. So an example would be if we've actually got a staff member who works in our kitchen. During a one-on-one, he was talking about his love for food and his love for farming and agriculture. And we asked, well, if you could do anything you wanted to do within that, what would it be? And he said he wanted to start a community garden. This community garden would grow various vegetables to feed not only the community, but hopefully someday to bring income for the community where they would be able to farm enough of certain produce to sell to others. Those are the initiatives that we are interested in for the Tese Fund, is people looking to transform their own community in different ways. It shouldn't be just our role as an external organization to do it. It's also staff. We have a panel of staff and management that make decisions on where the funding is going to go and how much someone's project is going to be funded. That's really what it's about. It's about empowering others to create economic opportunity, and through empowering them, they can empower more people. So that's the Tese Fund in a nutshell. Obviously, over time, we would love to invite other safari large properties in Victoria Falls or in Zimbabwe, Greater Zimbabwe in general, to participate and to impact communities beyond just our small community, and perhaps one day even expand across the African continent.
That's really great to hear. And it's a very heartwarming, wholesome request that came from the staff member that you were talking about. I feel like these types of things, when you hear about these stories, it really kind of makes you reevaluate yourself and your choices and humble yourself in a way that sometimes the simplest things can give us so much joy, but we just forget and we get greedy. It's amazing to hear about you touching people's hearts in that way with your staff and giving them that comfort to speak freely about what they want to do and better the community around them. So my next question, Vimbai, is could you describe to us a bit about the local ecotourism in Zimbabwe and how sourcing everything locally, like how do you go about that? And what are some of the things that you have been sourcing locally?
Yeah, I think when we talk about every camp is different. So I will focus on what we've done. In terms of ecotourism, we are, sustainability is one of our pillars. And this includes for us initiatives such as having zero single-use plastics on our property and our property being 100% solar powered. And then educating our staff on how to recycle. We're looking into creating a training program on the sustainable development goals just to create greater understanding of why it's relevant for us to be a sustainable camp for our staff. In terms of sourcing everything, unfortunately, we weren't able to source everything locally. That's the dream that we had. As I said before, not everything was available. What we were able to do, some of the things we were able to do is basket weaving that was done locally. A lot of our, we call it a metepi, materials that we use for sun shading or for our outdoor showers, or our flooring being sourced locally. In terms of once we operate, it's fresh produce being sourced locally. So, we work with a seasonal menu just to cater for that. Trying to make sure when we say sourced locally, we're not just thinking of Zimbabwe, but we're thinking even more local, which is the community and surrounding communities of where we are. I think in a place like Victoria Falls, it's a very small town. The process of figuring out where to source things really comes by conversation and having relationships with people. It is a walking town where you literally will walk from one coffee shop to the next and see something interesting in someone's store and be like, where did you source that from? Is it local? Who made it? And reaching out to small business owners and trying to get that into our properties. So in terms of art, that's some of what we had to do. We also source things over social media and just research of who's doing what in Zimbabwe and how can we work with them.
That sounds really incredible. And it's just so great that you're really getting the local community involved as much as you possibly can. I know you did mention that, of course, you couldn't source everything locally, but I'm sure that you're doing the most that you can with the resources that are available. So that is already a huge step in the right direction for the community. And I'm sure that they're very grateful for your support. So my next question is actually about the future. So where do you see Batoka Zambezi Sands River Lodge in the next couple of years? Or where would you like it to go?
Zambezi Sands is, we'd love to obviously have that be the crown jewel of our collection. We intend on building multiple properties, not only safari products, looking at various destinations across the African continent, really just creating properties that speak more to that destination and what that local community is about. So it could end up being a property that's specifically focused on the cultures of various tribes that sit in an area, or it could be a wellness property. But the idea is to replicate more the social model and the use of hospitality and tourism to, as we said, create sustainable livelihoods.
Well, I'm excited to see how it goes, and we'll definitely keep an eye out to see the progress. When have you already opened, or are you opening soon? What's happening currently?
We're not open yet. We're opening soon in less than a month, actually. So just around in November, which is just around the corner.
Yes, so exciting. Okay, so you have your big opening launch date in November. A lot of last minute touches, or are you pretty much ready to go?
One thing that I've learned about hospitality and providing a service is I don't think you ever stop putting any touches on a prophecy. I think every time you get to a certain stage, you're like, oh, I think we should add this, or would our guests be interested in this kind of wellness programming? So it's almost a never ending process.
No, I totally get what you mean. And of course, you always want it to be perfect. So you're always going to keep thinking of improvements along the way.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, Vimbai, thank you so much for answering all of our questions. We've actually come to the segment of our show where I'm going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. So just a little fun game that we like to play. Are you ready?
Okay, let's go for it.
Okay. So first up, what is your go-to comfort hobby?
Cooking.
Cooking. Okay. Who would be the one guest that you would love to invite for a dinner cooked by you, dead or alive?
I would go for kind of a cliche, but Nelson Mandela.
Okay. Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Night owl for sure.
Oh my God, same. Yes, I feel you on that. I don't know how the morning people do it. Who is your biggest inspiration and why?
My mother, she's just an amazing female leader and has always taught us to go for what we want to do and not be discouraged by the surroundings, what people have to say. And she's a living example of that.
That's amazing. So that now brings us to the Green Pill Moment segment. The question that I'd like to ask you is, could you share an inspiring or life-changing experience that you have gone through, which was your Green Pill moment?
I think a defining moment for me was at a very young age, well, relatively young, I'm not that old, 21, was unwell with a very serious condition. This was when, I had studied computer information systems and I'd always been my dad's girl. He said he wanted a scientist, and I was really determined to give him this computer scientist that he wanted. It was during that period where I kind of had some time to dig into myself and try and figure out what my purpose in life was. What would I want to be remembered for? What kind of world would I like to see? And it really was the foundation that inspired taking the risk with Betoga, especially just going into an industry that I really didn't know and doing it particularly because of the mission, which is to transform African lives. I think for me, that's really important because I am African and I've had incredible opportunity throughout my life. What I want to make sure of is that we provide the same opportunities and access for our brothers and sisters on the continent. My green pill moment came during a tough season, but it's definitely been the driving force of a lot of the decisions I've made in both my personal life and my career.
Well, that sounds like a really inspiring moment for sure. I can see just how passionate you are about this project. And that's just something that should hopefully inspire many others to do the same for their communities as well, wherever that may be. So thank you so much for sharing that experience with us and your story. I'm definitely very excited for you to open the doors of Batoka Zambezi Sands River Lodge and everything that's to come with that.
Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure, really. And just before we wrap up, I wanted to check if you had any social media handles that you would like to share, any websites with our audience where they could find you or follow you.
Yeah, so the social media is Betoka Lodges, and that is spelled Batoka Lodges, Lodges. Our website is betokalodges.com. And yeah, we look forward to sharing what's happening on the ground, sharing a lot more about our property through our social media channels. So that's Instagram and Facebook, and then our website, which is betokalodges.com.
Okay, so now everybody knows where they can follow along your journey and possibly book their stay down the line. So thank you so much again for joining me today. I wish you and Batoka Zambezi all the best.
Thank you so much.
If you enjoy our conversations, please like and subscribe. See you next Wednesday.